A couple of things out of the way, and then I want to kind of jump into this. My friend Scott, and that was a wonderful message this morning, by the way. He's going to help me with this. We're going to put some things on on the screen. I forget you can't see it from here, but he's going to put some things in the screen as we go along, and we'll talk more about that later. On the website, and it's really not Austin Grad's fault that it's not coming up. It's my own fault because I was the last one to turn this in. I just could not figure out for this presentation what would be most helpful. So what I decided to do was just to turn in the notes I'm using. That's what's on the website. I just thought, if nothing else, maybe that would be helpful. And then there's a select bibliography that might be helpful as well. Well, this is kind of weird for me because last year we were in this sermon seminar, and it was the Tuesday afternoon after the fajita run, and I always have trouble staying awake. So if you start to nod or kind of do your head like that, I understand. And Bruce McClarty and I left to visit. He spoke last year, president of Harding University, sat on that third row, I think, there on the end. And we went to a Starbucks not far from here and sat outside, and he asked me or invited me to consider working as vice president for the School of Theology in Memphis. And we had a prior conversation, but I wasn't expecting that. I thought we were just going to have coffee. And so that turned into about an hour and a half thing. Well, that night, he's going to speak again. And just before he gets up to speak, Stan looks at me and says, "Would you come pray for Bruce?" Well, Stan has no idea I've had this conversation with Bruce. I look at Bruce. He looks at me, and it's just kind of this weird, you're about to pray for me after I've just offered you this anyway. So I prayed for him, and we moved to Memphis in December. I preached in basically 3 congregations for about 36 years. And there were some other churches, but by and large, it was 3 congregations in North Alabama and Kansas City and Waco. And I'm doing a different kind of ministry right now, working with a lot of students and doing some other things. I want you to know that what I'm doing right now it is not any more at all. It's just not more important than what you're doing in a church. If you're doing something in a church, serving in some way, that is frontline ministry. That is right there, out on the edge. There's a lot at stake. I'm in a role now where I'm passing you ammunition and looking over your shoulder and doing some things, trying to be helpful, but it's not like what you're doing. And so you come here to this sermon seminar and you take all of this in. And hasn't it been helpful? But I just want you to know, even what we're going to do right now, it's pretty important. I think it's a real opportunity. Just going to share with you my own experience, and you can take it or leave it. But I do want to say that about what you're doing. It is so important. And we're investing a lot of time to be here at this seminar, aren't we? I mean, you put together the hours from all these churches, wow. And so it's just really an honor to get to be here with you. We're going to talk a little bit about social media and ministry. I want to ask the question, how has technology impacted the way you do ministry or the way ministry is done in your church? I've got to ask a few questions because this is after lunch. I mean, I cannot, we're going to have to do some back and forth here. But I want to talk a little bit about my own interest in this and why. Somebody said earlier that you were technologically challenged. I think some of us feel that way. But these days, in this culture, in 2014, you have to be careful about what you say publicly about that. I know a guy, and he means well, but he went to a church in the Southeast, SEC football, okay? In the Southeast, went to a church, his very first Sunday in this church, he announces to the church that he pulls for their opponent in football. And I'm thinking, boy, where is your brain? I mean, you don't start off like that. You don't start off by saying the very first thing you're pulling for their opponent. And we learn after a while, don't we? I can be preaching and I can make an innocent statement like, I'm not much on this social media, this Facebook or this Twitter, whatever they're doing, and I'm just not much on the blogs or the whatever that is. There is a generation, a very, very young generation, that would find that very odd. Some of you are like me. I can remember when there was not, before the internet. Remember? I mean, you know how old that is? We're preaching to a generation that doesn't know anything but that. And so what I'd like to do is to share with you a little bit about just my own experience here, and I want this to be really practical and helpful. If you get one thing practical out of this, you get to leave. You don't have to stay for the whole thing. So if you get your practical thing, just take off. I know we'll say, Alan got it, he's gone. Seriously, this is not some kind of theoretical. I'm just I want this to be practical. We do live in a different world. Everybody open your Bible to Matthew chapter 16, and you see the phones coming. I didn't mean that really. You see the phones coming out. You see the iPads or the mini iPads or the Kindles, and you may see paper Bibles. It is just a different age. And it's an age in which all of this is fairly new. The first Kindle came out in 2007. The first iPhone came out June 29, 2007. That's not that long ago. The first iPad came out April 3, 2010. At first, I saw these as new tools. In fact, I think that's the title of this talk. But in some respects, it's almost more than a tool. It's a language for some, especially a younger generation. It was 1990, and I was with my friend Chris Bullard, the late Chris Bullard, preached in Overland Park, Kansas. And I was at the Gladstone Church, and Chris was fooling around with this computer. And he was telling me that this computer was helpful. And the first thing I thought was, you know what we say when we don't understand something? Oh, I don't need a computer for, these books are good enough. I didn't say that to him, but I thought it. And then I began to see what he was bringing up and what he was doing. And those were the days of AOL. Remember when you used to get this little plastic disc in the mail all the time? And CompuServe. And those were ways of accessing information via the internet. And I can remember when we moved to Waco and I got this computer and I dialed up in our house and made all this racket. And all of a sudden, I was looking at the New York Times on a screen. I thought, wow, this is a different world. And then eventually, we could bypass AOL and CompuServe and go directly to the internet. So I began this blog in 2004. That's 10 years ago. And I named it A Place for the God Hungry. Go ahead and bring that up if you would. Or is it up? Okay. I can't see a thing, Chris. Oh. Very good. You're not Chris, you're Scott. Chris is my friend. Thanks for just smiling and nodding instead of saying, you idiot, you don't know who I am. Well, I've been writing this since 2004. And I started doing this because I'd seen a few blogs and I just wondered, I don't know, I thought, what would that be like if I had a place where I just wrote? And I didn't really have a purpose or intent or anything. And then I decided I'm gonna start writing for a portion of our church who I really don't talk to very much, but yet I think they might read something. And so I began writing these very short pieces, mainly with a general tone of encouragement. And the intention was, I was hoping that maybe some of the folks that were the back row people and some of the folks that were in and out would begin to read that. I had an aha moment when a woman in our church told me one day, she said, you know, I read what you write, and so does a few women in our office. And there was one woman who said this, she said, I feel like I know your preacher and he doesn't even know I read his work. She said, I read what he writes. I read it every week. And it's like it's safe and I can hear what he's saying and he doesn't even know I'm here. And I thought, oh my goodness, this is interesting. Well, I continued that for a little while, and I began to see that there was something to what eventually became known as social media, but I didn't quite know what to do with it, but felt like I was kind of onto something. And then we get to 2014. 2014, almost half of the people on mobile devices are networking on social media. As of, when was this, 2010, there were 325 million mobile subscriptions. That's a lot. That is a whole lot of mobile devices. 325 million in this country alone. Well, I kept writing this blog, and I began to kind of zero in on a purpose, and I decided I would basically aim what I wrote for church leaders with the exception of one post. And when I use the language of post, I'm just talking about a paragraph or two, one post per week, just kind of intended to encourage people in general. So what I do is I write basically 3 times a week. On Mondays, it's something called a Monday Start, and I just simply list links of what I think might be helpful resources, particularly for church leaders. Tuesday, Wednesday, I usually write a little bit more broadly. I might write something about marriage or parenting. On Thursday, I write something called Ministry Inside, and it's specifically something about or for church leaders. Now, I'm going to tell you something that I feel real uncomfortable saying, but I'm trying to communicate this, and I don't know any way to do it but like this. I've been writing this for 10 years. Between January the 1st of this year and last Thursday, I've had 11,000 readers. Between January 1 of 2014 and last week. That's not 11,000 different people. That's 11,000, I'm sorry, that's not 11,000 views. That's 11,000 different people going to that blog. That took a long, long time to get there. It took years. Now, all I'm saying is these tools, whether it's Facebook or Twitter or a blog, have the potential for broadening your influence, helping you do good, and adding value to what you're about. And those are the three purposes. Those will be in your notes. But those are the three purposes for which I do this, okay? Let's talk for a moment about how in your church has technology impacted just life in your church in general. This is the free-for-all moment.
Church webpage.
Church webpage.
Ease of communication.
Ease of communication.
PowerPoint during sermon.
PowerPoint during sermons.
Takes a lot of time.
It takes a lot of time. Extra sermon prep because PowerPoint. Somebody said, sir?
The paperless hymnal.
The paperless hymnal, okay. How is streaming? Yeah. How about
Able to get information out a whole lot quicker.
very interesting, able to get information out a whole lot quicker, even quicker than you thought it would get out. The old days of somebody going to the hospital and we hope they call our church and let us know that they're in the hospital. It's been all over Facebook for 3 days, but we didn't know about it until finally, boy, that information goes out quickly. And there's this sense in which I don't have control as a church leader over this information. It's just coming out from, and it may be accurate, may not be, but it's sure going out. How else is it impacted?
Online giving.
Online giving, yeah.
Data management, better trending
Yep.
reports.
Yep.
It's impacted my prayer life.
In what direction?
Waiting for that 30-second delay sometimes when, you talk about when people send stuff out there.
Yeah.
And just, you're like, what were you thinking?
Yeah.
Things out there. But,
Yeah.
and in some times of being able to stay connected with people that you couldn't otherwise do.
Oh, yeah. I mean, the other day, where's Daniel? Was not long, Mislav Ilic in Croatia. I mean, I'm Skyping with Mislav in my office. He's in his apartment. I've been in his apartment. And we're just talking as friends and talking about life and our children. And who would have ever dreamed you could do that across from Croatia to the U.S.? Wow. Any other? Matt?
Yeah, pastoral care is a little harder because people don't usually use their filters when they're on Facebook and often causing drama between members or posting pictures that are provocative and things like that.
Yeah, that's very good. All right, let me say three things, or let's talk for a moment about Facebook, let's talk for a moment about Twitter, and let's talk for a moment, may say a little bit more about a blog. What do you hear when you think, when you hear the word Facebook, what comes to mind? Gossip. Self-absorption.
Information I don't need to know.
Information I don't need to know. Too much information.
Sense of anonymity because they feel like they can say anything on there and it's fine.
Uh-huh.
When it's not really that fine
Yep,
for a Christian to be saying that.
yep. What else?
Family and friends. Family and friends.
Family and friends. What else? Social media, in some way, it's a lot like a car. These cars do a lot of damage, I guess you've noticed. Racing through the streets, people get drunk, drive, kill other people. It's also a nice way to go on a family vacation and make a lot of memories. So when Rick Oster, who I work with at Harding, Richard Oster, he's taught New Testament for years, and he's interacting with ministers on Facebook and his former students and giving another point of view to something they're wrestling with. Wow. When young parents put something on Facebook about a child, and their preacher is able to say, as I did this morning, I am so proud, Will and Kirby, I'm so proud of you both and your marriage. It means something to them. Facebook can be a total waste of time. It can be used like Glenn Pemberton is using it. It can be used like my friend Robert Creech at Baylor used it when he had surgery a few weeks ago, and he developed this page where people from all over the nation were communicating with him about his surgery. It can be a place where people like me who do writing for the church can post something, and then lo and behold, our teenagers are reading that, and they let me know in a comment or a like. So one of the things I want to do as I even think about social media is think about, why in the world would I do this? The purpose, I don't know why I held up 4, the purpose of this class is not to convince you to somehow get a blog, you start using Facebook or start using Twitter, or to suggest that you need to be using all 3. I would suggest that we don't need to be so dismissive of each one, that there may be one of these, just one of these, that could be very, very helpful to you. Somebody said that Facebook is a lot like a living room coffee table, that it is kind of a way to just kind of see this and see that. You don't have to stay very long. You kind of see what people are up to. Yes, you do go through a lot of nonsense. I just went to H-E-B and the ham is on sale. I didn't need to know that. On the other hand, it is the place today where a young woman says, I'm having surgery tomorrow morning and I'm terrified. Are there some people who could be praying for me? It just might be worth thinking about, and thinking about if this could be useful in your church. Let's do Twitter for a minute, okay? Does anybody use Twitter? Very good. Do you have your phone where you could do something for a minute? Okay. If you'll tweet anything and use the hashtag Sermon Seminar 2014, and I think Scott is going to, hopefully we're going to be able to bring some of this up. So Sermon Seminar 2014 is a hashtag. Twitter is this strange animal where you have 140 characters to say something. 140 characters to say something. And again, there's all kinds of nonsense that people use Twitter for. On the other hand, it is where very often many of us are gaining access to news for the first time. When there was the Libya uprising, I can't remember when this was, some months back, I remember I've got a Twitter feed, and these are 140 character messages that basically come from news agencies. And I remember some person tweeted out, there is word of unrest in Libyan streets, hashtag spring uprising or Arab uprising. And I went to that particular hashtag, and when I say hashtag, it's kind of like a label. If all the vegetables are supposed to go in a certain drawer, okay? A hashtag, if the hashtag is labeled spring uprising, then everything that's got that hashtag is going to appear in a column. And here are people tweeting in English from Libya, talking about soldiers running through the streets and seeing people killed, and all of this is happening. Well, that's not why I use Twitter. I use Twitter because one of my purposes in life is to add value to church leaders. And so most every day, and certainly every other day, what I'm doing is I'm tweeting some kind of message regarding an article, a post, a chapter, a book that I think might be helpful to church leaders. Take a look at N.T. Wright's latest book On, and then I'll put a link to Amazon. Take a look at this book review. Now, why in the world am I doing that? I'm doing that because I think God has put me in a place where hopefully I can encourage and help add value to church leaders. So I'm attempting to do that through a blog. I'm attempting to do that through Twitter. What else am I missing in Twitter? What do we need to do?
It's great interacting with one another. I mean, it's a easy way to do that. Easy way to get lots of information. You know, lots of people sending links and get it quickly. So.
Lots of people sending links and interacting with people.
Yeah, and I use favorites. I don't always have, personally, I don't have time to read everything on there, and so I'll use the little favorite thing, and that kind of saves it. And so then I'll go back when I have the time, and I'll read articles and things that I've found interesting, or I think that are going to be helpful or interesting.
If you want to practice polishing a thought in a very concise way.
Oh, okay.
I mean,
All right.
in Facebook, a lot of times you can get that more information, and you have this huge. With Twitter, you get, how can I maximize this 15-second interaction with this person?
Okay.
Which is a really intriguing skill to try to develop.
Okay. So with Twitter, take John Stackhouse, for instance. That guy interests me. He just interests me. When John Stackhouse sends something out that says, folks, if you've got 5 minutes, take a look at what appeared in the New York Times today. That means something to me. Because he interests me, and I'm interested in what interests him. I don't know how to gain access to that kind of information, but through that means. Okay. Let's go to Scott McKnight's blog. There are a couple of resources that might be helpful. One is this book by Justin Wise called The Social Church, A Theology of Digital Communication. This is not a how-to book. It's not a book on how to go to your computer and create a new Twitter account. It's a book on why in the world would anybody want to do that. And I found him helpful. He's a graduate of a seminary. He's a geek, very techie, but he has a great appreciation for what we're trying to do. That might be helpful to you, Justin Wise. This is Scott McKnight's blog. I don't know any one blog read by more church leaders, ministers, pastors, priests in this nation than his blog. He basically, he will say it like this: I read books that I know pastors don't have time to read. Now, I think I would guess that in this crowd, we read regularly, and I do. But I don't have time to read everything. I don't have time to read everything. So I will go to his blog, and he's given a review of a book that I need to be aware of, but I don't have time to read it. He's very, very helpful. You don't have to agree with him. You don't have to agree with his assessment, but you can be introduced to the arguments. Okay? That might be very helpful to you. Somebody like Thom Rainer, man, you're good. 10 things we need to hear from young church leaders. Rainer is very, very good for anybody who works with a congregation. He is practical. He's a researcher. The best bloggers do not write on and on and on. They're fairly concise. I find him helpful. I want to keep up with what he's doing. There's a guy named Ed Stetzer that a lot of ministers read. Stetzer, he has a podcast, interviews a lot of people that are interesting to me. But again, I find him helpful. Okay? Now, I don't spend a lot of time with this. I don't spend a lot of time looking at blogs every day. I will skim through, I'll look at something. Sometimes I will drop it into Evernote, and if that doesn't communicate, forget it. But I will, so I can come back and look at it later. I'm not sitting by Twitter all day long. There are pieces of my time where I'll take a glance and look at what's being talked about. Again, you can waste a lot of time if you don't have a purpose. You know, if you don't have a purpose, you can waste a lot of time with this. If you got a purpose, it can be very, very helpful. Okay, let's stop for a minute, okay? Don't go away, though. Comments or questions at this point, or just anything you want to add?
Seems like the messaging aspect of Facebook can be very beneficial. Instead of just having it be out there, a lot of times people will message questions to me and what have you, and I'll message back, and we'll have an exchange a lot of times that isn't out there for the whole world to see.
Yeah.
You do some real encouraging one-on-one, just via that tool as well.
Yeah. Very good, Don.
We discovered that part of the ability of Facebook was that we may not read their emails a lot, but every day they get something will pop on Facebook. My church has started putting our bulletin on a link on the internet. So when they go to Facebook, our church has a Facebook page, and they can go and download the bulletin or a calendar of events, or and that kind of thing. And so it's just one more way to get the things that, so we can finally end that huge excuse of, well, I didn't get the bulletin this time.
Yeah.
Or bad. But
For many, it's replaced the church website.
right.
Just because that's one less step to get, this way you don't have to leave Facebook. If they're gonna be on it all the time, and so.
One less thing you have to maintain.
Yeah, one less thing, you have to maintain all those things, and it's a whole lot easier sometimes than going to your website and entering in this code and trying to make sure certain things download properly.
And when
just
you
click send.
Yeah.
And when you have someone who used to go to worship there and now has moved off to Kalamazoo, and they see their home church's Facebook page, they can still be a part of it by that, and so it kind of helps with that aspect as well.
Yeah. Very good. Yes, sir?
There's a opportunity, I think, also for us to get other people from the congregation involved. In operating our Facebook page, we've got a couple of younger people involved that really weren't doing anything in church ministry before that.
Yeah. Very good. Very good. Somebody else? Notice how this middle part has just come through here. Very good. To the left or right, or the other way? Sheep and the goats, whatever. Now, yes, I'm sorry, Angela?
The opposite reaction. Our church is mostly retired couples, and we've asked them, should we make a web page or a Facebook page or something? They're like, no, we want nothing to do with that. Okay.
Yeah.
They don't want to do any of that.
Okay.
A lot of them don't even have the internet.
Yeah. See, and that's, I'm glad you said that, Angela. We're all different. And see, what I'm talking about, and I should have mentioned this earlier, I'm not talking about something for younger people. Our 70-year-old women in Waco are doing this. The other day I saw something, and somebody had a difficult day with a child, and all these 70-year-olds are making these comments about child rearing, and we're praying for you. And I'm just looking at, the encouragement going on. And should there be face-to-face still? Of course. But, you know, I'm grateful that there is that avenue. Now, let me say this about Facebook. And any of this, all of this is fairly new still. And it's fluid. It is very fluid. I mean, about the time some of us learn Facebook, we're going to be on to something else. Already, a lot of younger people are leaving Facebook. Twitter's here now, but who knows what things will be like in 5 or 10 years. But I think what is probably here to stay is something digital and a way of connecting online, whatever that instrument looks like. But again, what I would encourage us to do is to think about a purpose, because if my purpose isn't clear, after a friend of mine was got him a Twitter account, free, it's free. Got him a Twitter account, wrote out this 140 character tweet, sent the thing, and then said, "This is the stupidest thing I've ever done in my life." Well, it probably was. He had absolutely no purpose. He had nobody looking at it, and you just have to think about, why would I do this? And is it worth the time of investment? And if you're where you can't really think of a purpose, I wouldn't worry about it right now. But on the other hand, like some of the comments here, if it appears to you that there is a way to be helpful, encouraging, nurturing, or in some way help people connect who otherwise wouldn't, it might be a useful tool.
And I would also add, some of the most encouraging things I get is when I'm not necessarily active.
Mm-hmm.
My grandmother hardly ever puts anything on, but she is able to see so much of what goes on when she wants to. And I think a lot of people have this idea that to be involved means that you have to put so much.
Be writing things and putting things on. Yeah, very good point.
And so you can use it in so many different ways.
That's good. Okay, I might want to make a few comments, and again, these are on your notes. Just want to say some things practically. To use social media, there's a couple of things necessary. One is consistency, commitment, and in some way telling your story. I write for this blog. I write this blog. I haven't written anything this week. I'm going to be doing good if I can. You can get by with that for a week or so. I don't need people. People expect something to be there on Mondays, and they expect another thing Tuesday or Wednesday, and they expect something on Thursday. And after a while, you can begin to lose people if you're not consistent. And that's something to think about. You might want to think about, am I really committed to this? What kind of commitment would this take? I'm telling you, when a minister tells me he's been on Twitter half the day or Facebook or whatever, that's ridiculous. I mean, you can do plenty. You can use this tool and gain from this tool by letting it eat up half your days. Neil?
Can you comment on the use of YouTube?
I can't from experience. I can't from experience other than just using it, if that's what you're.
Well, at our church,
You guys. Yeah.
we posted baptisms
Yeah.
and other things that occur in the church, video them, put them on YouTube, and the whole nation can look at it if they want to.
Now, in this right, Neil, I think I saw one of those, the barbecue woman. She talked about why she wanted to become a Christian, begin following Christ, and then it showed her being baptized, and yeah, that was a very powerful. Yeah. Second comment, just of a practical nature, there's no substitute for high quality content. You know, there are lots of options out there, and if you want to do something that your church will read or other people will read, the content has got to be good. I don't know how to say it any other way. It doesn't mean you have to be this great writer. It just means somehow I need to put some thought and intention into that. I want to talk for a minute about what I'm doing with Twitter and Facebook and my blog. Somebody asked me one day, said, "Looks like you're spending a lot of time on that." Well, I'm not. It just looks that way, because here's what I'm doing. I'm writing a piece for my blog. Maybe it's something for church leaders on how to finish strong. I'm kind of thinking a lot about that lately. How to finish strong. Once I write that and that appears on my blog, A Place for the God Hungry, and that's godhungry.org. Godhungry.org is the address. Once I do that, that same post is going on my Facebook page. I've got a whole different group of people who read my Facebook page that don't read my blog. Then I'm going to tweet that I just wrote something on how to finish strong. I've got a bunch of people that follow me on Twitter that don't pay any attention to my Facebook page, but they would go to my blog if they knew it was something interesting. Well, all of that comes out at once. It looks like I'm just doing all this. I'm not. I just wrote one article. I'm just looking for another platform, a way to position it. The challenge online is to get heard. Look, what I'm using this. Everybody that comes up here, we're using this. And the reason we're using this is a wide room, and it's much easier to talk where everybody can hear it if we use a mic. Somehow I've got to figure out a way to be heard. And so what I want to do is, I work hard on my sermons. You do too, don't you? But if you're like me, very frequently, in fact, I will see a piece of that, a paragraph of that I think could encourage somebody else if it were written in another context. I'm going to use that. I might blog about that. I might tweet about that. That may end up on my Facebook page. I'm looking for ways to broaden the way I can do good and to add value. All right, I'm going to wrap this up. Another principle here, short is more powerful than long. Short is more powerful than long. This is why a lot of preachers don't do very well with this. Short is more powerful than long. People have many, many, many options when it comes to being online. I go to something that's got all this content and it's paragraph after paragraph. Even if I like the author, I don't have time to wade through all that. I might clip it and save it. I shoot for about 500 words. And that means I'm going to have to eliminate some. I'm going to do things in a series. Short's more powerful than long in this medium. Next, what is on the internet now is there forever. What is on the internet now is there forever. I want to be very careful about the pictures, and I'm not talking about skanky pictures, but just I just want to think about, I've got this friend, and he's got this picture of himself, and he's just goofing around. I know he is when they took this picture. But when you look at his picture there on his blog, and then you look at the serious nature of his article, it doesn't fit. I'm just thinking, man, you either change that picture or change the way you write, because somehow I can't take it serious when you look so goofy like that. And I've got goofy pictures too, but I'm probably not, at least intentionally, going to put them on the internet. Yes, sir.
My most, how should I say, most visited blog was 30-second Devo. We used to do. I
Okay.
think they liked the title, 30-second Devo. And it was 300 words.
Okay.
And we had to really, really compact that thing.
Okay.
One time, after doing that for a few months, I received an email from a gentleman who said that had been using our Devos as an introduction to his lessons at the prison. And he felt kind of guilty for using it, so he sent us a $100 donation.
Okay. Okay.
So, it really
Yeah.
amazed me that somebody would use something that we're creating that was short and a little story, a Bible verse,
Okay.
basically that.
You know, that's very good. The main thing, think about who you're writing to. Think about who you're writing to. If you go to Rick Oster's blog, I wish I'd asked you earlier to go to that. If you go to Rick Oster's blog on, what is that, Subversive Letters, it's kind of a spin-off of Revelation. He has these long posts. Well, Rick's not writing to the average. He's got there's a very niche crowd, and they're reading those long posts. I can't get away with that. He can. Because the people who read him will read that. One of the things I want to ask myself is, who am I writing to? Who in particular am I writing to? Why am I doing this? All right, I want to close. Why be interested in this? Number one, it's an opportunity to broaden my influence and to do good. And to do good. I'm like you. I preached in churches, where every single Sunday I was writing a new sermon. And those Sundays come every week. But I'm writing these new sermons every single week. My father-in-law asked me one time, he said, do you ever preach one of those sermons somewhere else? And it just kind of, the hackles in me, righteous, of course not. And he said, well, did it ever occur to you that if it did the folks at Waco some good, it might help the folks in Little Rock? I mean, why don't you preach that again? Well, what I want to do is I'm looking for ways to do more good with work I've already done and I'm already doing. I'm not trying to create new work for all of us. But what is there in what you're already doing that might be helpful? Number two is the opportunity to connect with people you otherwise would be unable to. Charlotte told me, my wife told me one time, she said, you will say things in letters that you just didn't say to me one-to-one, but you'll say it to me in a letter. Now, none of you have ever heard that. But my wife said that to me. Well, what I found was I'm not the only one like that. There are people in our church, and I'm back in Waco for a minute, who were quiet and reserved, but would write me these thoughtful notes online, would make these comments that just, I don't know, I saw a whole different side of these people. And so it gave me an opportunity to connect with people I would otherwise not be able to. And finally, the opportunity to add value to others, to be helpful and add value to others. And I don't know what that would look like for you. I'm not interested in tweeting about my latest trip to H-E-B or who's going to win the game Saturday. I mean, that's fine. I'm just not interested in doing that. And so what I would encourage you to do, a couple of things. If all this just kind of sounds out there and weird and like it's not you and you're not interested in it, go have a cup of coffee. I mean, don't worry about this. But if you're thinking you would just like to explore this a little bit, I would encourage you to talk to some people, maybe in this room, maybe some of the people who have commented, about ways that you could use a blog, Twitter, or Facebook better, maybe with more intention, and what's been helpful. Sometimes it might be something as simple as just getting a Twitter account or a Facebook account and then becoming friends. And these friends aren't going to come to your funeral, okay? So, but becoming friends with people who you're interested in. With people who you're interested in. Miroslav Volf is on Twitter quite regularly, and I follow him and pay attention to him because he has the most, I'm sorry, I said Twitter, I mean Facebook. He has the most interesting little, I don't know, 2-sentence thoughts about discipleship, Jesus. I just find it interesting. I find it encouraging. And, you know, what you can do is get a Facebook account, and then you request Miroslav Volf to become your friend. And what he'll do, I tell you, what he'll do is he'll accept your friend request. And then you're able to just look at what he's putting on Facebook every day that might be encouraging to you. Now, maybe that's interesting to you, maybe not. But I want to tell you, we're living in a culture and we're living in a time where this is becoming more than a tool, it's becoming a language. I haven't answered all the questions and left a lot unsaid, and you could easily say, yeah, but you didn't mention this or the implications of this, and all that's right. All I wanted to do this afternoon was to basically do something that might be a little bit of an introduction for some of us, maybe. Expose us to a few resources. You might want to read Justin Weiss' book. I hope now you can get access to the speaking notes that are on the webpage. If you can't at the moment, I'm sure you'll be able to before the seminar ends. But thanks a lot for being here. It's a huge investment to come on Tuesday after lunch, after fajitas. But I really appreciate it. Any more questions and then we'll be done? Comments?
What was the name of the author of that book?
Justin Wise, W-I-S-E. And these are in the bookstore, by the way. Stan?
Go ahead. Well, the various resources you've mentioned, are those in the notes?
Yes, yeah, they should be on the notes.
Jim, that's the other one. Renee could not get the link fixed on the sermon seminar site.
Okay.
But we now have it at the Austin Grad site, and it's here on the board.
Oh, great, okay.
The notes are
In the blue, I think. Okay. Mark Shipp is giving a little, look at there, right there.
Well, you might not want to go there.
I do want to thank you for being patient because, yes, sir, I'm sorry.
Well, just one final question. Do you, or for me anyway, a lot of us are in churches where, at least for me, where you got a third of your congregation who grew up in a world where none of this existed, not even telephones or TVs, and a third where you had some technology, and then you have another third where it's all technology. And we're kind of stuck in the middle, having to communicate in 3 different avenues.
Yeah.
One way, one that way, one that way. And that's where the time consuming, it'd be easier if it was just all one way, but we're having to use old school phone, pigeon carrier, modern technology, and then even newer technologies. Is there any kind of resource you can recommend that would help bridge those gaps together?
Well, actually, I'm dancing with that right now because that's what we've got in our room, but not to the extreme that but we have people in the room who have never done anything on this at all. And we've got other people, they were on it this first thing they got up this morning. And then other people who they've kind of messed with it, but nothing really intentional. You know, one of the things I've tried to do, and I don't know a resource, but one of the things I've tried to do is, and you can judge how well I did it this afternoon, but I try not to use insider language to people who have never explored that. You know, That's why I said a while ago a tweet is just simply a message with 140 characters. You don't have any way of knowing what a tweet is if you've never fooled with that, you know. But on the other hand, I think it's helpful to say, and I've said this before to a church, you know, many of you saw on Facebook this week that Sister such and such went to the hospital in Houston. And that was on Facebook this week, and I just wanted to relay that so that to people who have never explored that, at least I'm suggesting that it's user-friendly and it can be helpful. But I don't see the value in just insisting that everybody go there. What I'm trying to do is I guess, bridge as much as anything else. Yeah. All right. Thank you for your patience. My goodness. You were very, very helpful and good, and I appreciate you being here this afternoon.